안녕하세요. 저는 알리나 대학생이에요. 그룹 22-1T이에요. Today, I'd like to present you my topic that is about Korean independence movement. Today's topic covers even more topic, the struggle for independence. But today we will delve into the topic of the Korean independence movement in details. At the end of our lesson, you will be able to understand the historical context of the Korean independence movement. For this, we will explore key events such as the First March movement in 1919 and learn about the impact of Japanese colonial rule on Korean society. Also, you will be able to analyze the role of nationalism in Korea's struggle for independence. For this, we'll study the contributions of key figures like Shin Chang-ho, An Chan-ho, and Kim Gu, and also we'll discuss the influence of cultural resistance on maintaining Korean identity. And also at the end of the lesson, you will draw parallels between Korea's independence movement and other global conflicts. For this, we'll compare Korea's movement with Ukraine's ongoing conflict, focusing on resistance, sovereignty, and cultural preservation. Korean ethnic nationalism is a movement and ideology that highlights the importance of the ethnic identity, history, and culture of the Korean people in preserving the identity of the nation. Korean ethnic nationalism arose at the beginning of the 20th century. The main reason of its emergence was the Japanese colonial occupation of the Korean peninsula from 1910 till 1945. The Japanese occupation aimed to assimilate Koreans and their cultural identity. There are main aspects of Korean ethnic nationalism. First is struggle for independence. The main goal of the Korean people as of the 20th century was to gain independence from Japanese colonial policy. Numerous groups such as religious, militant, and immigrant was patriotic activities actively fought for independent status for their native country. Next one is ethnic self-awareness. Korean people placed great emphasis on the development of their language, maintain traditions and culture. Also, identity and national unity. Nationalist ideas contributed to the formation of modern Korean national identity, emphasizing the importance of the unity of Koreans, their shared history and cultural traditions. Also, I'd like to pay your attention on important figures of Korean ethnic nationalism. One of the central figures of the Korean nationalist movement was Shin Chang-ho. He is considered one of the founders of Korean ethnic nationalism. He was a historian, journalist, and political activist who contributed to the development of nationalist ideas through his intellectual work and participation in the struggle for independence. His writings, such as The New Historical View, he advocated the idea that national identity is formed on the basis of shared history, ethnic unity, and culture. Also, he criticized Koreans for losing self-determination and called for national revival. An Chan-ho is another important figure of the Korean nationalist movement who made a significant contribution to the development of the national consciousness of Koreans. An was a Protestant social activist who is in 1907 established the later prominent Korean independence organization Shinmin-ho when he returned to Korea from the US. He also established the Young Korean Academy in San Francisco in 1913 and was a key founding member of the Provisional Government of the Republic of Korea in Shanghai in 1919. He is also one of two men believed to have written the lyric of South Korean national anthem, Ekukka. And the last one, Kim Gu. Kim Gu is a prominent political leader and independence fighter who also played an important role in the formation of Korean ethnic nationalism. He was the head of the Korean Provisional Government in exile during the Japanese occupation and played a leading role in coordinating the independence movement. Kim Gu actively supported the idea that Korea should remain a unified nation with a strong national identity and called for the consolidation of nation forces in the fight against Japanese occupation. Kim Gu made great contributions to public education. In 1899, he actively engaged in educational activities and founded several schools in Hwanghae-do province. Also, I'd like to tell you about the impact of Korean ethnic nationalism on culture and society. In South Korea, culture is given a lot of attention to this day. Japanese colonization showed that the code of a nation lies in the culture of that country. Today, there are numerous cultural events in Korea and abroad, such as Korean Reading Day and Korean Independence Day. Social movements in South Korea, such as human rights movement and feminist organizations, also actively incorporate nationalist elements. These movements contribute to the formation of a new national identity that reflects contemporary social and cultural changes. On this slide, you can see two questions that you need to answer for deeper knowledge about this part of the topic. And we move on to the second subtopic, ascent from the independence movement on 1st March 1919. 1st March 1919 is a significant date in the history of Korea, which became a symbol of the struggle of the Korean people against Japanese occupation. This peaceful uprising, led by 33 Korean cultural and religious leaders, aimed to proclaim Korean independence after nearly a decade of oppressive Japanese rule. The movement quickly spread throughout the country, drawing approximately 2 million participants, including various social groups such as students, merchants, and religious leaders. Despite the fact that the movement was brutally repressed by the Japanese government, from which about 7,000 people died and more than 1,000 were arrested, it has a great influence on the Korea's people to this day. The 1st March movement remains a symbol of Korean resistance and is commemorated annually in South Korea as a national holiday. Also, one of the main aspects of this topic is prerequisites of the colonization of Korea. The end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th were the period of great political and social changes in East Asia. Then, Japan gradually strengthened its position in the Korean region. The development of Japanese imperialism and colonial expansion was driven by several key developments. First, Japan won important wars, which enabled it to establish control over Korea. After these victories, the Japanese began to use diplomatic and military advantage to consolidate control over the Korean peninsula. Secondly, the 18th century marked the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. This marked the beginning of capitalism and big business in Europe. European countries spread their colonies in Asia and Africa. In the middle of the next century, the Western powers forced the Qing dynasty in China and Japan to become open to the new policy of capitalism, to which the authorities of these states agreed. At the same time, the same policy was proposed to the Joseon state, but Joseon diplomatically refused it. In 1875, Japan sent a battleship to attack Gwanghwa-do and Yeonggwang-do Island in order to force Joseon into foreign trade. Joseon was forced to sign the unequal one-sided Korean-Japanese treaty with Japan in 1876 under military threat. As a result, imperialist powers including Japan competed for Joseon's resources. In 1897, Joseon changed its name to the Korean Empire, Daehan Jaeguk, and continued the adopted policy. And in August 1910, the Korean Empire was formally annexed by the Empire of Japan. The Japanese government was cruel to the Korean people from the beginning of the occupation. The first thing Japan did was take control of Korea's economy. At the same time, the new government began the process of Japanization. Japan banned the use of Korean names and even the Korean language. Most of the production of economic products was sent to Japan. All these negative conditions caused massive public protest. And also about background of the 1st March movement. There were some events that prompted Koreans to increase anti-Japanese sentiment. First was disdainful attitude of the Japanese toward the Koreans. Over time, almost no paid work, sending almost all the fruits of labor to Japan instead of using them for the benefit of Korean people. Second is the death of Kim Kojong. Kim Kojong was a great Korean ruler. But on 21st January 1919, Kim Kojong died suddenly in Deoksu Palace. Many people who knew him assumed that it was a murder because the ruler did not have any disease. And also influence of international events. On 2nd April 1917, American President Woodrow Wilson announced his 14 points in a military address. It was designed to rebuild the world after the First World War. And the most important point there was the last, the 14th. It proclaimed a general association of nations that would offer mutual guarantees of political independence and territorial integrity to great and small nations alike. And the last one, emergence of Korean nationalist groups. After the occupation of Korea, many of the ethnic population of the peninsula left for other countries. Despite the territorial difference, they actively helped their countries and people to gain independence. And now the main point is start of the movement. The First March movement began on 1st March 1919 with a significant protest in Seoul following the funeral of Kim Kojong. This event ignited massive anti-Japanese protest, starting with the reading of the Korean Declaration of Independence by a group of 33 leaders from various religious backgrounds. In late February, 33 activists from various groups held several secret meetings in Seoul, where they signed the Declaration of Korean Independence. They printed 21,000 copies of the declaration and distributed them throughout the peninsula among members of the Korean diaspora to United States President Woodrow Wilson and members of the Paris Peace Conference. On 1st March 1919, 29 of the 33 signatories of the declaration gathered in the restaurant, having previously called other members of the anti-Japanese movement to start a protest. They publicly read the Declaration of Korean Independence and received the support of others. At the same time, there was a large gathering of Koreans, approximately 5,000 people, who knew about the announcement of the declaration at Dapkol Park. One man in the crowd stood up in front of all of the people gathered and read aloud the Declaration of Korean Independence. At the end, there were loud shouts of "Long live Korean Independence!" "Dahanpuri Manse!" After that, all 5,000 people went to the main street for a public march. Also, women played a major role in the protest. Korean women, despite traditional restrictions on their rights in society, participated in demonstrations, which increased their social status and played a significant role in the development of the feminist movement in Korea. Among the women who spoke at the public march were Kwon Ki-ok, the first female veteran pilot in Korean history; Kim Maria, the founder of the Korean American Anti-Japanese Women's Activist Organization; Yoon Hee-sun, the first chef of an all-female militia that fought for independence; and the Gisandan, a voluntary organization formed by Gisans, or aristants, courtesans, to resist Japanese rule. The members of this organization were women who were imprisoned for a rally in Tongyeon in 1919. Unfortunately, as a result of the First March movement, Korea didn't gain immediate independence, but this protest was of great importance for national consciousness and the subsequent struggle for freedom. After the end of the movement, an important event was the establishment of the Provisional Government of the Republic of Korea. Syngman Rhee was the first president of the Provisional Government and later became the first president of South Korea in 1948. An Chan-ho was a prominent leader who contributed to its founding, and Kim Gu was another critical leader serving in various capacities in the KPG. Japanese also governed the political, economic, and cultural life of Koreans. But after the protest, Japan implemented several reforms in an attempt to partially satisfy the Koreans' demands and reduce tensions. And now on the screen you can see 3 questions that you need to answer for deeper knowledges. And now we move on to the third part of this topic, aspects of independence movement. Between the late 19th and middle 20th centuries, Koreans used a wide range of tactics in their struggle for independence. This included both diplomatic and military strategies, the development of national identity, movements for cultural autonomy, and international support. About political and democratic tactics, Korean society tried to draw the attention of the international community to its situation. This was one of the key tasks of the Provisional Government of Korea. And also during the Paris Peace Conference of 1919 till 1920, representatives of various countries discussed the sovereignty of a number of states. During this conference, the Korean American National Association tried to send representatives to the conference, but the US government prevented them from doing so. Also, there were international supports and connections with other liberation movements. Korean nationalists actively sought support from the world community and established connection with other liberation movements. And of course, cultural resistance. Cultural resistance involved efforts to preserve Korean language, traditions, and identity in the face of Japanese assimilation policies. This included the establishment of Korean language schools, cultural festivals, and the promotion of Korean literature and arts. And now look at the questions and please answer them. And our last subtopic is comparison of Korea's independence movement and Ukraine's conflict. The situation in Korea during Japanese colonization and Ukraine during the Russian-Ukraine war share some similarities. Let's talk about resistance and national identity. The Korean independence movement involved various forms of resistance, including armed struggle, political activism, and cultural preservation. Ukrainian resistance has manifested through military defense, civil protest, and cultural reaffirmations. Also, international response. During the Japanese occupation, Korean leaders sought international support, particularly during the world wars, to gain recognition for their independence. And in Ukraine, the international response to the Russian invasion has been more pronounced with wider spread condemnation from Western nations, military aid to Ukraine, and sanctions against Russia. And about propaganda and information warfare. The Japanese colonial government employed propaganda to suppress dissent and promote assimilation, while Korean independence activists used propaganda to raise awareness and garner support for their cause. And about Ukraine, the current conflict features extensive information warfare with both sides using propaganda to share narratives. Ukraine has effectively used social media and international media to highlight its plight and to counter Russian disinformation. And here are also two more questions that you need to answer. And as a conclusion, the emerging situation in Korea in the 20th century became a turning point in the formation of the political, cultural, and ethnic views of the Korean people. Unfortunately, many Koreans were killed, persecuted, or maimed during the first March movement, and they didn't achieve the desired results. But even though the Koreans were not able to immediately gain independence for their country, there were still positive results. Firstly, the sense of patriotism and the value of one's own culture and nation increased. Secondly, the movement led to Japan becoming more loyal to Koreans. Also, at that time, Korea was known internationally as a state which required acceptance of independence. As a consequence, at the end of the Second World War in 1945, Korea gained the desired independence for which thousands of Koreans shed their blood. It is worth concluding that unity, dedication, and love for one's country, history, and culture can have enormous power to resist even the most powerful enemy. Korea is the most successful example of the struggle to preserve one's identity and ethnicity. That is all. Thank you so much for your attention. 감사합니다.